Hi, everybody. Welcome to tonight's Wireside Chat for the month of April. Eclipse Day, very exciting. We are very happy to be welcoming tonight Patricia Lillie, and I will tell you about her. Patricia grew up in a haunted house in a small town in Northeast Ohio. Since then, she has published picture books, short stories, fonts, and novels. That's so cool to publish fonts. As Patricia Lillie, she writes quiet horror and weird fiction. Her story collection, The Cuckoo Girls, was a 2020 Bram Stoker Award finalist. As Kay Charles, her much nicer alter ego, she writes cozy-ish mysteries with ghosts. Lillie is a graduate of Parsons School of Design, has an MFA in writing popular fiction from Seton Hill University, and has taught in SNHU's online MFA program since 2018. In 2020, she was the recipient of the UPSI, New England Region Adele F. Robertson Emerging Professional Continuing Education, or educated. I thought I was going to make
Spit it out.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Let me start over. The UPSI New England Region Adele F. Robertson Emerging Professional Continuing Educationer. Oh my God, I did it again. Educator Award.
I got a certificate.
Yeah, okay. We'll just say that she was honored to receive this very prestigious award. She also knits and sometimes even purls. And as usual, my co-host, Melissa Hart, also an instructor in the Online MFA and a fantastic writer and all-around great person, is here as well. So those of you that have attended Wireside Chat before know that we often talk about writing craft, and we talk about the personal journeys of the writers who are our guests and our own journeys. But I'm going to start today by talking about ghosts, because I'm just like really interested in your growing up in a haunted house, and I'm curious to know whether that influenced your subsequent career as a writer of horror and cozy mysteries with ghosts.
It was probably the ghosts and Shirley Jackson. You can blame them both.
Yeah, Jackson's a lot of people have Jackson to blame.
Yeah. Well, my Shirley Jackson story was in this haunted house. I'm about maybe 10 years old, and my cousin, who was a year older than me, was spending the night. And this was in the days when houses only had like one TV, if you can believe it. We still have one, but that was the day. So we were allowed to camp out on the living room floor and watch the late night movie while she's spending the night. And the late night movie was the original movie of The Haunting, from The Haunting of Hill House. And the way I still remember to this day is two little girls just huddled together on the floor of the living room, terrified. And even at that age, I knew that if they just would show what was going on, it would be less scary, but they never showed it. Terrifying. I loved it. She grew up to sleep with a baseball bat under her bed and never watched another horror movie again.
Yeah, that's a scary
movie. I
tell
that story a lot, and someday she's going to get that baseball bat on me. And then when I hit 7th grade, I had an English teacher who was known as the most terrifying teacher in the school, Mrs. Peak. But Mrs. Peak also kept a paperback library on her windowsill of things that weren't necessarily in the school library. And The Haunting of Hill House was there. And other Shirley Jacksons, both Shirley Jacksons, the fiction writer and the household. And I just absolutely fell in love. And that could have had something to do with growing up in a haunted house, although our ghosts we were never frightened of. They were just there.
How did they manifest themselves, your ghosts?
We would, well, there was one bedroom in particular that I was in 4th grade when we moved into this house, and my sister's 6 years younger than I am, so she wasn't even in school. And there was a man that would show up and stand at the end of our beds. I saw it, she saw it. My mother accused me of telling her stories, and I hadn't, but he was there. Kitchen cupboards opening and closing. I mean, my mother, who didn't believe, we'd walk into the kitchen and find her with her hands on her hips going, I don't have time for this right now. Just stop. And then later, it was an old farmhouse. I mean, this was 50 years ago, more than that. It was 150 then, so now it's over 200, but it was an old farmhouse. So it had its creaks and groans and built-in things like that. And as my parents remodeled it, they finally moved their bedroom downstairs, and I got the big cool bedroom because I'm the oldest and there has to be some benefit to that. And it was a great room, and the ceiling slanted with the roof of the house, and it was long and narrow. And I still have this big old carved Victorian bedstead that was my grandmother's, and our great grandmother's, one of them. And you had to have it at one end of the room or the other. With the ceilings, you couldn't put it against the sides because the walls weren't high enough. And in the middle of the room, there was a recessed closet. And my father had built doors on it that just swung open. They didn't latch, they just swung and closed open. Whichever side of the room I had that bed on at night, whether it was the north or the south, because teenagers, they, even with big Victorian furniture, rearrange their rooms. I would wake up in the morning, the doors would be closed, but I'd wake up in the morning with one about 6 inches, and the opening always faced the bed, no matter which side of the room the bed was on.
Wow.
But they were just watching and keeping an eye on us. We were never afraid of them. Years later, after my parents had moved out, my sister met the parents for the family that then had the house. And she says, "Oh, you live in our old house." And the woman says, "Can I ask you some questions?" And she had a lot of them. And yes, they were things that happened to us. The difference was we just all took it in stride. It was part of life. I mean, I had a dozen cousins that were in and out of the house. The ghosts were there too. It was just part of everything. They didn't like it. It terrified them. They had a whole different outlook on it. And they sold the house fairly soon. Which one of the stories in my collection, which is the closest to pure horror, because it has a horrible ending, was inspired by that, because I kept thinking, what if, we think of ghosts as horrible things. What if it's just, they reflect back how you look at them?
Right.
And it took me a long time to figure that story out, but I had that idea for a long time. But so, yeah, it was, and the best part about the haunted house is it was on the corner of Erie and Elm. This was before Elm Street got famous, but it was literally on the corner of Erie and Elm. So
that's great.
It's
well, it was fate, obviously.
Obviously. So.
Oh gosh. I may have seen a ghost at some point in my life, but I can't be sure. It happened when I was very young. I screamed and my parents came running. It was like some kind of apparition floating outside my window, like a dark shape. But I can't really know for sure at this point whether I saw it or not. Melissa, have you had any kind of like sighting, supernatural sighting like that?
Yeah, but not a ghost. My mother took the form of a sandhill crane last month at a writing retreat.
Wow.
That's a little different though. Can I ask Patricia a question?
Yes, please, of course.
What is quiet horror?
It's not jump scares or, well, The Haunting of Hill House is actually quiet horror. You never see it, and terrible things are just around the corner all the time, but it's not extreme horror or
body horror or anything like that.
Or body horror. I think body horror could be quiet horror if it was written properly. But there's also multiple kinds of body horror. If you'd ask me, I would say that body horror is probably my least favorite form of horror. Yet, I'm going to mess up her last name. I've heard it a few times and never met her in person. Gwendolyn Kiss.
Oh, yeah.
K-I-S.
Mm-hmm.
her first novel, The Rust Maidens, I loved that book. It was my favorite book the year it came out. It's body horror, but it's not, there are transformations in it, but it's not bloody, shocking. The thing is, even horror movies like that really don't scare me. Most of the time I look at it and say, God, I'm so glad I don't have to clean up that mess. So that, I mean, it's the atmosphere and the psychological, even when it's a supernatural.
Right.
And
So,
if you're
so
going to
you,
write horror, you probably need to do what bothers you, not.
right. I mean, is quiet horror, I mean, it's not quite psychological horror, is it? It's because it's
Well, a lot of times psychological horror doesn't have any supernatural
right.
or monster element. Jack Ketchum's books, they're terrifying, but the monsters are usually human.
Right.
Some of them. But so it can't, mine have a supernatural element because Haunted House, Shirley Jackson, you know,
right.
it's this thing. Even when I try to write nice, something bad happens, except Kay Charles can almost pull it off.
So your
So
alter ego. So tell us about your alter ego.
my alter ego. When I was in my MFA program, I became good friends with a cozy mystery writer. Now she writes cozies. They're very nice. They're very sweet, and she's it's Valerie Burns, and she's very successful right now. The New York Times has looked at her books, and if I wasn't such a nice person, I wouldn't remind her of all the times that I was texting her when she got rejected by an agent saying no, and she's going, which we all do. I'm giving her pep talks. If I wasn't a nice person, I wouldn't tell her that if I wasn't a nice person, I wouldn't remind her that often. Anyway, I like cozy mysteries. They're my flip side reading when I just want to do. And mine are not as cozy as some. They're not quite as sweet as some because I don't know, my protagonist kind of has a mouth on her, and but she doesn't use the F word because that's a line you don't cross in cozy world.
So what
nice.
part do the ghosts play in the cozy mysteries?
Well, my protagonist has seen ghosts since she was a child, and the ghost of her great grandmother has been like her constant companion. Can't get away from her. She's attached to her since she was a child. And she grew up in a very well-off family, the epitome of small-town aristocracy. And small-town aristocracy is something special because, you know, they're in a small town, so they take themselves more seriously. And she had a kind of rotten childhood because they thought she was either a pathological liar or mentally ill. And she left home at, I don't know, in her 20s and woke up in a not very nice position one day to find the ghost of her father standing over her, demanding that she go home and solve his murder.
Oh, wow.
So she does go home. And that's the setup for the first one. And she hasn't been all sweetness and light in her 10 years away, let's say. And then she's got to readjust, and she gets home, and her mother, who could give Emily Gilmore from Gilmore Girls a run for her money, seems to be suffering from dementia, and all this stuff's going on. And they find her mother wanders away, and she find her sitting on the front porch of a house with a dead body inside. The dead body inside just happens to be a woman that the protagonist, Marty, her father had been having an affair with for years. So mom's a suspect, and we have to sort all this out. Plus, you know, also has to be on her best behavior because her father did leave her money, but she's got to prove that she's well behaved enough to get it, or else it goes into a fund to pay for bail, hospitalization, whatever's needed eventually. So that's the setup for the first one.
Very cool. Well, that doesn't sound very cozy. That sounds,
well, Cozy, it follows. That's why I say cozy-ish. For
Right.
some people, it's not cozy enough. And when I first started sending it out, when I first wrote it, that was a problem because cozies were really, really going through a super, super, super cozy period at that time. And they're far sweeter than Agatha Christie's, the queen of cozies. But she has, you know, good people die in hers and things that were not. So that was a problem. But when it got published, people seemed to like it. So unfortunately, it got orphaned by its publisher, and it kind of
Yeah,
sat
that's
there
too
for
bad.
5 years, selling like maybe 4 copies a month, and that was only because it was an Amazon publisher, and they had it in Kindle Unlimited. So I didn't do the second one for a long time. Well, I had half of it, but when we're told, oh, we're not publishing new books, so that one you're halfway through. Ha! Yeah. Are you
Can I ask
waving
a
at somebody?
question?
Oh,
Yes, go ahead.
It's me. Sorry.
just where I can.
What do you mean by the book got orphaned?
Great
Okay,
question.
it was originally published by a branch of Amazon Publishing. They're, Thomas and Mercer, and this was a imprint that was digital first. They only did digital. And so I did self-publish a paperback copy because there are people in the world that don't believe it's a book if it was only an ebook. So it was published by them. And it must have been 4 maybe months after it came out. It was like the month after I earned out my advance. They sent out this letter saying, we will continue to, have your books, but you can ask for your rights back, but we're not publishing any new titles. So it was a series, and I'm writing a second series, and people just don't pick up second in series unless you're already a big name. There was, at that time, I think it was Berkeley, the accountants had come in and looked at them, and they said, yeah, get rid of these cozies. So a lot of well-known cozy writers were orphaned, so they were out working on getting picked up. Nobody's going to pick up my little book. So it sat there half done for about 5 years, and beginning of last year, I got it out and looked at it again and said, this doesn't really suck, at least not in any way that can't be fixed. So I did it.
So did you get
get
the rights for the first one back and then republish it
didn't.
yourself?
I can
Yeah.
anytime. They were handing, all you had to do was ask. I didn't do it because at the time I know just how much work self-publishing is. I hadn't done it, but I still knew, and I just couldn't even cope with the idea of it at the time. The work, the money, because you can do it. There's ways to do it cheaper, but it does take investment, and it didn't. I just couldn't do it. So when I read this one and decided to finish it, I decided to give it a shot. So the second one is self-published.
Okay.
APUB still has the first one, which has worked out to my advantage because they stopped doing any kind of promotion, even price reductions after a while. Well, I wasn't promoting it either. How do you promote a first in series that doesn't have a second after 4 or 5 years? Who can blame them? And just about the time that I started, I had put the new one on KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing, with a release date and pre-orders. And the first one had picked up I ran out of fingers to count how many books I sold in 1 month for the first time in years. It was really startling. All of a sudden, I got this letter from the marketing team saying, we're putting this book on sale for $1.99 through all of January, which happened to be release month. So I kind of changed my marketing plan and sunk not much, but some money into running Amazon advertising and that. And all of a sudden, the second book hasn't sold this many per month since it earned out its advance. And I'm getting a lot of read through. It's in Kindle Unlimited, and I get fast read through on that because it's free. And first I thought, yeah, but nobody it's actually buying, it's reading through. It's beginning to catch up. I'm not buying an island, but the two books together, I like might break even this year. It's
So that sounds like there's going to be a third in the works.
I'm about 9,000 words into a third, and I haven't. This third one is the first one I fully outlined. I'm a plantser. I usually just have like ending in the beginning and maybe a couple of signposts in the middle. Well, this time I kind of worked out the mystery, and I'm actually having more problems writing from something that resembles an outline than I have without it, because I keep thinking, oh, I've got to fit this in. So I'm about 9,000 words and I'm not happy with it, but I put it away for a week, and maybe if I look at it again, I'll have that, well, it only sucks in fixable ways feeling again.
Right.
Because it's allowed to suck, just so you can fix it later.
Patricia, did you just call yourself a plantser?
Yes.
What is that?
I'm not a total pantser. I don't just take off and go. I know where I'm going, but I don't know how I'm going to get there.
Okay.
I'm really good at writing the first 800 words of things, whether it's a novel or a short story. I can whip out those 800 words and it's really great. Now, then the rest of it, that's another story. So I can get the beginning, and usually I know what the ending is. Half the time I even have the last paragraph written, and I maybe come up with a couple of signposts along the way that I can aim at, or decide that that was bad and taught, but I don't have an outline. I would probably write faster if I had an outline, but it just doesn't work that way for me. But for this particular one, the mystery itself is, even with lightweight fun mysteries, making sure you weave all the things together so that it makes sense is hard, because if you don't, the readers are going to go, well, that can't be that, who did it, because you did this over here. And it's like, oh, right. You're right.
I know a lot of mystery writers kind of backwards plot. Is that something that you've done?
I haven't done that for a book yet. I've done it on short stories. There's a short story that is in my collection that I was so stuck on, I couldn't. And I have a friend, again, from my MFA program who teaches backwards plotting. And I said, Anna, tell me about this. And that's how I did it. I took from the end that I knew and went backwards to the part where I stopped. And it's like, it works. So I haven't quite done that with this yet. So,
right.
I mean, I'm 9,000 words in, and I know who's getting knocked off, but they're not there yet. So I need to get busy with this.
So as a plantser, do you find, like, how many drafts will a typical novel of yours go through?
I'm a serial reviser. I mean, it's just, when I sit down to write, the first thing I do is read what I wrote the day before and do a quick edit and revision on that. It's a great way to get your head back into the story. And then there's times when I'll stop. I haven't written for a week, so I'm probably going to go over those whole first 9,000 words again before I write the next 200 or whatever I squeak out. So I do a lot of revising and editing as I go. And then I will do it 2 or 3 times minimum before I even get the nerve to show it to somebody else to read, because I'm just that paranoid. I revise like crazy. For me, that's when it comes alive. But there's someplace I was going with that. Oh, one of the things I share with my classes when I teach a thesis writing class was a Facebook post that Jim Hines did years ago, when he said, so I finally sent the draft to my agent. If anybody thinks that that's easy to do, and it was a picture of his list of file names from each version. Like, there was like 36 complete novels there.
Yeah,
It was
I'm
all the same thing.
I'm the
So,
kind of writer, like I have my files are like, final version, and then after that will be final version plus one. After that, it's
yeah,
like, no, really the final version, I mean it
really,
this time. And
this is
it'll
it.
be like
This is it.
10 or 20 of them like that. I never really learned.
Uh-huh.
Well, what
And
can
then
can
the
you
minute
share
I
like
send it
any
off,
can you share like
what was
any
that?
tricks? Do you have like revision tricks that you've learned over the years that kind of help speed the process up?
I don't have a revision trick, but I have a plowing through that first draft trick that
Share it, please.
that ties into revision, which is I'm a slow writer to start with because if I write this sentence and I know it's wrong, I will get hung up on making that one sentence right. You don't need to make that wrong, but it's me. I'm pathological. But then you run into something where you either know what has to happen, but you can't find the words for it, or you're even missing one word. I have this thing in brackets that I put that basically says, write something cool here about this. And I do the brackets and I do a word like bracket, all caps, something at the very beginning, because then you can do a find all and find those as you go. And one of the things that I found, and this ties into revision, because you don't have to do the revision, is when I go back to fix it, it's like, that's not needed at
Hmm.
all. Or, that was covered in the next chapter. So it doesn't need, the next chapter was the right place for it. So that's kind of a setting up for revision thing. It makes it easier. One of the hard parts is figuring, is that kill your darlings thing.
Yeah.
That can be really hard.
Well, that happens in revision most of the time, doesn't it?
Yeah, that one's a revision. That's one of the hard parts of revision. This is something I share with my students when I teach a thesis class too. In The Ceiling Man, it was my thesis novel and my first published novel, and that one is a horror novel. I had this chapter that I absolutely loved. It had two characters on full display. They were interacting, they were great. My critique partners loved this chapter. It was absolutely not needed in the book. And it ended up being 2 sentences to get from here to there.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it was like probably 800 to 1,000 words that I had to cut out. And everybody enjoyed it. The reason they enjoyed it was the things they were seeing out of these characters were what they already knew, but they already knew it. It didn't move the story ahead. It didn't develop new insights into those. It had to go. But for
Patricia, I'm
some
gonna
things, I put those in a file to Frankenstein them later, but that one really is just that book. There's nothing to do with it.
I mean, that's one of the things about novels is like often a novel will have room for stuff like that, right? You can leave it in because the novel's big enough or messy enough or whatever that it can handle it. But in other novels, and I guess horror novels maybe especially, unless you're Stephen King, they're really driving towards their ultimate point, right? And you don't
Yeah.
necessarily have that wiggle room.
Well, if this scene had happened earlier in the book, I would have had that wiggle room. But by the time it happened, it was time to start that hurdle towards the end.
Yeah.
It's there've been just enough bad happen that it was time to plow ahead. And where it was, because what took place in the scene, it could only happen there. It couldn't
Right.
happen before and it couldn't happen later. The main point of the scene, which was the 3 sentences that were left, had to happen there. So
Yeah.
that had to go because it messed up the pace. And I didn't want to take it out, but
Yeah.
I did.
Good for you. You did the right thing, I'm sure.
Well,
I'm
it
gonna
was my thesis novel and I wanted my MFA, so I did it. And it
I'm
was
gonna
right. I hate it when advice like that is right.
I'm gonna read a question to you from one of our viewers who wants to know
Okay.
what do you think is overdone in horror, and what do you think horror should be exploring further?
Oh, that's a tough question. I think maybe there's some things that are overdone in mainstream horror because they're marketable already, and they're, I don't, the thing is, horror is a much wider genre than most people think it is, like the quiet horror, body horror. Lucy Snyder did a great, I saved it somewhere, list at some point of all the different kinds of horror, just with one-line descriptions, and they're all so different, and they all attract different readers. Like I said, I don't, with some exceptions, because the minute I say I don't like this, I will have read a book that I loved, but I'm not that big on extreme horror.
Yeah.
I don't really care for jump scare movies. So I don't know what is overdone, but I like the direction that horror is going in, that provides deeper characters, and like everything else, it's finally becoming more diverse. And even the supernatural horrors are real. They might be dressed up in the supernatural, but they are relatable to people's lives. Am I making sense here?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It kind of feels to me like, you know, you and I are of an age where we kind of remember like the phases that horror has gone through, right? The ebbs and the flows and everything. Right now, today, it feels to me like we're in another, you know, kind of golden age of horror, where
We're
it's
getting
really
there.
expanding and like you say, it's becoming much more diverse, reaching a wider audience, and also exploring other, I don't know, elements maybe more openly. Horror has always kind of had you know, like a reputation of sort of like touching on all of these dark areas that maybe shouldn't see the light of day, right? It's horror is something you should be reading in the closet all by yourself. But really, I mean, I feel like
I
that's
had somebody ask me, why do you use your real name for the horror and a pen name for the cozy mystery? Why isn't it the other way around? And it's like, well, because I wrote the other one first, and I really don't care. That's not why I have a pen name for the cozy mysteries. So
well, let's talk a little bit
secret.
about your pen name. Let's talk, I mean, not about your pen name itself, but like the business of having two separate identities, of having two separate
There's a reason for
careers.
that. There are
How do you balance
crossovers.
that?
I'm a little crazy. I don't know. It gets hard sometimes. And sometimes I have to make Kay Charles edit out when Patricia Lillie snuck into that book. Oh, can't use that word.
What about a collaboration, a Kay Charles and Patricia Lillie collaboration?
You really want me to get nuts, don't you?
Of course.
I'm not sure there's enough alcohol in the world for that. But the reason for the two of them is there are crossover readers, and for readers, if they're not interested in cozies, they just won't pick it up, or they won't. But there are cozy readers out there that if they like the books and they see that name, they'll just grab it. And they would be, there's a large portion of that audience that just would be appalled and never pick up another book of mine again, because they want the, even with a cozy-ish like mine, there's a warmth to it, and there's always a happy ending, and there's always justice at some point. And they not only wouldn't like the words that I used, because I didn't use very many bad words. I mean, they were very, very mild in the first one. There are a couple of Amazon reviewers that said, I just put this down because I don't need potty mouths in my life. And I'm like, potty mouth? Where's the potty mouth in this? So people have different definitions. So it's a sign. And I'm blanking out on her real name now. Science fiction and horror. T.L. Kingfishers want her pen name. And
oh yeah.
Well, she also writes children's books under her real name.
that's somebody that writes in multiple, I mean, more than two genres, right? I
Oh yeah.
just recently read my first novel of hers, which I enjoyed quite a bit, actually.
Ursula Vernon?
Yes, I think that is who it is.
That's it. Well, and she also writes children's books. And she said her first horror was published, I believe, as Ursula Vernon. And she said she came up with a pen name after the day she ran across the library and snatched the Ursula Vernon book out of a child's hand, going, no, you're not old enough for that yet. It was a good story, and that's paraphrasing, but it's kind of the same thing. It's a different audience, and I don't make a secret of it. It's not like that's not why. So there are people that read both, and there's people that only like one or the other after they read both, and there's people that like neither. So who knows? It's just the way it goes. So that's why I have the pen name. And yes, sometimes it is hard to balance it, and it's really hard to remember which website you updated, which is why both of them haven't been updated for a long time.
I guess it's easier that way.
And you have to watch to see who you're signed in on Facebook, because Facebook is full of cozy readers. They may not want to see my personal page. So it does get the mystery writer that I mentioned from my MFA program. She started publishing as V.M. Burns because there was another writer out there, as Valerie Burns. Well, most of her stuff is with Kensington, and she did 2 series for them and another series for another smaller publisher. And then she started a 3rd series for Kensington, and that's being published as Valerie Burns because they wanted another name for it. She just had, in December, her first book in another series came out with Berkeley, and Berkeley wanted a whole different name. And she's gone from V.M. Burns and Valerie Burns to Callie E. Benjamin, because we were texting all one night trying to figure out what she should use as a pen name. And so sometimes that's another reason people use pen names. She's got so many series going, and I don't know, each publisher wants, I don't know why they don't want to build on what's already there. But Berkeley asked for the pen name. So weird things happen out there. It's a business.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if it's a pen name, that hasn't been used before, you can kind of push that book as a first novel by
well, they're not even pushing it that way. Writer. It's a new series by Callie Benjamin, but she doesn't keep it a secret. And she's got websites for V.M. Burns and for Valerie Burns and Callie Benjamin. And she has a PA. It's not somebody that works, it's an online person that she hired that pens these things for authors. So that's how she does it. I can't afford it. I don't have that many series going.
So you mentioned that you've got, like different social media accounts for each of these, for each of your, your character, your author names. Do you have like different personas that you kind of inhabit as you're posting in one?
Not really. And since I left Twitter, I'm pretty much down to Facebook, simply because I keep thinking I'll do Blue Sky, but the thought of starting over and building that whole thing over again is just much time.
Come to Blue Sky. I like it over there. It's a very writer friendly place. Yeah.
I heard good things. It's just the whole thought of beginning again.
No, I hear you. Yeah.
So I keep thinking about that. So really right now it's only Facebook, and a lot of traditional cozy readers are on Facebook because, hey, a lot of them are old women like me. They're not kids, so that's where they are. So I've got Kay Charles has an author page, and I behave myself there. On my personal page, it's mostly friends and family and people that know me, and I don't always behave myself there. So it's that's what I mean. I stay signed out of Kay Charles unless I need to specifically have her do something, and then I have to double check and make sure I've left before I do something. So it does take some balancing. It adds time to those things, but.
So we have another question in the chat here that's asking, what are you working on now? Is there anything we should be looking out for? I know you mentioned you're 9,000 words into the third book in the Cozy Mystery with Ghosts series, but are you working on anything?
I'm working
is
on that
Patricia
book.
Lillie working on something?
She's working on some short stories. They're not necessarily sending out yet because, hey, I'm not fast, except when I am. And I have none of these stories are the ones that are fast. So I'm working on some short stories to send out again.
When you're writing a short story, do you have a particular market in mind for it? Or are you writing like,
sometimes.
I know this anthology is open, or I know so-and-so at this magazine is looking for whatever, or do you just write something and then figure out where to send it?
Sometimes I do, but let's see. The only time recently that I submitted to a themed anthology, it did get rejected, and when the anthology, which was fantastic, came out, I didn't even feel bad about being rejected because my story didn't fit. It was on the right theme, but it didn't fit with the overall feel of the anthology, the stories in it. Because sometimes that happens. And I did for this one, but I've gotten rejection notes that said I kept trying to fit this in and it just doesn't fit with the others. So that happened. But then it was accepted the next place it went out. So, hey, that was cool. So sometimes I do have that. And other times it's just, I start thinking about something and I want to write this story. And a lot of my short stories have roots in folklore or fairy tales. So some of the stories I've written were pursuing that in particular. What can I do with this story? There's a story in my collection that's known as What Happens When Patricia Tries to Write Romance. Everybody dies. I mean, it just
no happy ever after.
It just, well, there was a happy ever after for two characters. It just depends on how you look at it. So yes, that one's known as When Patricia Tries to Write Romance, Things Don't Usually Go Well. It's why I said for a long time, no matter what I tried to write, it went dark. So the cozy histories are quite a change for me.
Now there's kind of like a dark romance genre or subgenre, right? Where there isn't necessarily a happy ever after or even a happy for now.
My critique partner from my MFA program that came up to watch the eclipse with me today writes dark romance. She writes horror too, but she's also got a dark romance series going. In fact, when I wrote the story that, went wrong and everybody died, I said, "Ooh, this is a Michelle story." And it's her favorite story in the collection. I knew that.
It's interesting how like all of these barriers or boundaries, I guess it would be a better word, between not just between different genres, but even within genres, like romance is the one that seems most obvious, that there must be a happy ever after or a happy for another. Absolutely must be. And then a lot of many traditional publishers that publish romance still hold to that, but a lot of fans and writers
readers want that. If it's romance with a capital R, that's why they read it. Yeah. It's not about the ending for them. It's about the journey to get there.
To the happy ending. But there's enough people in that field that are like, well, I'm sick of this stuff. I want something else, or at least I want the freedom to explore something else.
And the new things coming up. So, and I love to see the new things coming up. I mean, I don't know that I'm a big romantasy fan. My 17-year-old niece is just suddenly crazy about it, and people love it.
Yeah.
But it's filling a need, and people like it, and it's different. I mean, I think that's something. Different isn't always good, but sometimes it's like, because people are tired of, they like the romance, but they're tired of the rules. Here's a genre for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like to see things grow and change.
Why not? I mean, you know, especially, you know, our program is a genre fiction program. And I mean, I really feel like we should be, and I feel like we are kind of championing all the efforts to tear down all of those walls and create new genres and new blends of genres. I mean, that's where the really interesting stuff takes place.
And I love the fact that this program celebrates genre. That's why I went to the one I went to, is the degree was in popular fiction. It was a celebration of genre. And it's like, now this is an MFA program I can get behind if I can only get in. But
Right.
I love that new development out there, because popular fiction, genre fiction should be celebrated. It's what people read, and it's got power. It's got entertainment, which should never be underestimated, but it's also, well, like the move towards diversity in genre fiction. It's got more power because more people are reading and seeing this, to reach more readers on these things than the best of a literary novel does, because they're not going to pay attention to it. And I love popular fiction. I like literary fiction too, but I love genre fiction and popular fiction.
I mean, my stepdaughter is currently like obsessed with the Sarah J. Maas stuff, and to hear her like talk about it, the enthusiasm with which she will, you know, kind of argue with the choices that Sarah J. Maas has made or what the characters are making. I mean, she is like completely invested in that, and that, you know, that isn't that what we want as writers, to have our readers
Exactly.
be that,
Be that
buy into
invested.
it to that extent.
That's my niece, grandniece, that's about to turn 17, is the same way. She's always been a reader, and we were over at the house a few weeks ago for her sister's birthday, and I knew she'd ask for a new Kindle for Christmas and gotten it, but she dragged the Sarah J. Maas books out of her room and said, okay, see these? There are a few more of these that need to go on my shelf. And I'm like, Patty, I've never seen her that. And that's part of what did it. And you know what? People can trash them all they want. They're doing their job. They're getting readers, and it's the power of a good story.
Absolutely. Here's another question. Wondering about your particular routine. Is there a particular time of day or area you write in every day or sporadically? Do you write to music? Do you need silence?
I usually don't write to music. Sometimes I do. It can't be things with lyrics, because I'll listen to the lyrics instead of my own words. I am the definition of not a morning person. Do not talk to me in the morning. Give me 3 cups of coffee first. Just stay out of my way in the morning. However, this is something I figured out while I was in grad school. Because writing a novel while you're working and doing this, that, and the everything is just, and learning to write a novel, like, it's nuts, it's hard, and there's a lot of pressure. Well, that pressure led to me not sleeping well at night. Not sleeping well at night ended up with me waking up at like 4 a.m. and not being able to go back to sleep. So finally I started getting up then and writing then. I don't do 4 a.m. anymore, but what I discovered is if I write for an hour, 2 hours, whatever. I mean, and I was only aiming for maybe 500 words a session in the morning. If I can get 250 words done in the morning before I do anything else. It changes my whole outlook on writing for the day. It takes away my stress. Sometimes I said I'm a slow writer. I find myself sometimes accidentally writing 1,000 words at a time. Now, for me, that's like, oh, who are you? What did you do with Patricia?
That must be that K. Charles person.
It must be that K. Charles person because it probably is, because Kay is my mother's name and she like gets up and starts cleaning the kitchen. Who does that? So it's so if I get up in the morning and I start doing some writing before I get distracted by anything else, I will get something accomplished. How much changes depending on, but that's it. And then I'll go on and do other work and do other things. But then I might also find myself coming back and fitting in another hour during the day, because whatever I did first thing before my head started getting distracted by everything else I had to do and answering emails and all that stuff, that's what gets me started. If I say, okay, I'm going to take care of all this business first, then I can write for the rest of the afternoon. I don't write for the rest of the afternoon. I play stupid iPad games for the rest of the afternoon. So that's that. And I usually write on my laptop. And I usually just curl up in a comfy chair with my laptop and write. Now, sometimes if I want to see pages big, I will come over to my monitor and plug in there. But I don't have a place to write, because one of the things I've learned is that I've got to be able to write wherever I am or I won't get it done. It's so the whole office thing. I mean, in On Writing, which is a book I adore by Stephen King, he talks about having your perfect isolated spot to write. It's like, good for you, Steve. I've often never really had that. And when I was working as a freelance graphic designer for 20-some years and trying to write, when I was at my desk and my computer, that's what I was doing. So to switch from a writer, from that to writer at that desk was, I was freelance and I telecommuted for a company in Maine for a while. And all I could think of was what I had to do in that career when I was sitting there. So then when laptops came along, I could sit someplace else with my laptop and write, and hey, cool, that works. So place-wise, music-wise, none of those things. I had to be flexible with that. But I have found that I need to do it before real life ruins my day.
Do you have like any other totems that are needful or helpful to you as you're writing? Like, for example, I'm
really boring in that respect. No, I don't. I know people that do. They have a candle that they like, and they find it very helpful, and I think it's a great thing. But I'm really boring with that. I just need to be able to have a place to park my butt and have my computer in front of me and do it hopefully uninterrupted. And unless it involves food, I can always be interrupted for food. But that's it. I'm sorry, dull in that respect.
Do we have any other questions? We're kind of coming to the end of the night, so go ahead, Melissa.
Is it okay? So I was looking at your website and I saw many of the fonts that you've designed.
Oh, yes.
And they're so much fun. I wondered if you ever incorporate them into your books.
Miss Kitty Deluxe, which is known unofficially as the font with the stripper name, is the font that's on the cover of the K. Charles books.
Okay.
So I used it there because I designed those covers. My layout for the first one was like, oh yeah, we like this. This will be, you can do this cover for the first one. And since I did that professionally, I mean, that's how I made my living for years, including doing book covers before the days of self-publishing. Nothing fancy or anything, I mean, famous, but I did those kind of things. So I did use it on that because that's one of my favorites. But yes, most of my fonts are K. Charles would approve. They're fun ones. I've got a lot of picture fonts and display fonts and fancy, but yes, I've used the one on the cover, the Miss Kitty.
Is like designing fonts something that is like is that a hobby or something for you, or do you see
No,
it?
that
How do
was
you
how I
see
made
it?
my living for years. I had done, this would be early 90s when fonts were first becoming available for people at home to use instead of being huge expensive things with the early Macs and then early versions of Windows. I did a shareware font that was a display font and pictures in it. And that was in the days when people actually paid for shareware and things. And that font was like making my car payment. It was really cool.
Right.
And I was working for a library at the time, but things happened in library world and I left. So just about the time that happened, a font company that was located in Calgary called me one day and said, we want you to design typefaces for us. And that was Image Club. And they were one of the first companies that made a variety of fonts affordable for the home user. So I did a lot of fonts for them, and they went through a couple things and were eaten by Adobe, and I did some for Adobe. And then that kind of, like anything else, the market got saturated. And then I've done some that are basically, it's like self-publishing. I did them on my own, and you can get them at myfonts.com, or Monotype carries them that. So I haven't done any for a long time, but I really enjoy doing it. And frankly, it takes as long to design a typeface as it does to write a book. A lot of people don't know that, but it does.
I'm sure it's you know, I'm always fascinated in like you know, a book, you'll finish like this great novel and everything, and you turn to the end and there's the acknowledgments and then there's the author bio or whatever, and then you turn the final page and there's like a little bio about the typeface. Like
That's called a
this book was been
colophon.
printed in, yeah, exactly. And
I was so sorry they fell out of favor, because it used to be the normal thing.
Yeah.
You'll find them a lot in old books.
Right.
But yeah, typefaces do make a difference, whether it's a text face, which I never designed, but I know how to use, or a display face and a lot of my display faces, it's fun to wander around the library because I see a bunch of them on books. There's one called Alley Cat that's actually on a lot of cozy mysteries. Ladybug Girl, which is a picture book, uses one called Whimsy. Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus uses Alley Cat. That's not the skinny font, but the one with the little serifs in it. Melissa's, that's mine. That's Alley Cat. You find them all over the place. Cinderella's on another one. But yeah, and don't there's one that's looks almost kind of like a hand-drawn typewriter font. That's not mine. Mine is the one that sticks in for emphasis, that's got serifs in it, has a kind of retro 50-ish feel to it. That's one of mine. So I enjoyed doing them, and I'm kind of enjoying not doing them now. It's
very cool though. I mean, it's as writerly as one can get, really, in a way.
Not only writing the story, but designing the letters too.
Yeah, exactly.
There is a symmetry there.
So that brings us to the end of our Wireside tonight. I want to thank our guest, Patricia. I want to thank Melissa, as always, and thank you to our audience who joined us.
I'm seeing all the little thank yous and everything up in the corner, and everybody, thanks for coming. And just want to say that because there's some of people I know.
Yes, I'm sure there's some of your students here. So we will see you at our next Wireside, which will be the second Monday of May. Gosh, It's already coming up on May. Incredible.
Yeah, I want to get that book out like the end of the year.